Squirrels have recently become one of the more frequently played tribes in Magic the Gathering, with Chatterfang Squirrel General holding the 22nd rank on EDHREC in terms of most popular commanders played. And it does make sense, squirrels being amongst the most whimsical and beloved tribes in Magic the Gathering, but surprisingly, it wasn't always this way. From their humble beginnings to their rise in popularity, let's explore the history of these furry critters in MTG. Squirrels first scurried into Magic during the design of the Menagerie set, which is later known as Mirage, in the card Unseen Wildlife. As it was intended to create squirrel tokens, but due to art direction changes, it ultimately produced cat tokens instead, scrapping squirrels for the time being. Unseen Wildlife was meant to be a sorcery for 3 green, where each player puts a squirrel token in play for each forest he or she controls, and they treat these tokens as 1/1 green creatures. Eventually, this card got turned into Waiting in the Weeds. The art of the card was supposed to have just eyes of critters in the background, but the artist made a cat instead, thus scrapping the original idea completely. It wouldn't be until 2 years later that squirrels would actually make an appearance in Magic the Gathering. On June 9th, 1997, the Weatherlight set was introduced and it brought squirrels into Magic, but not in the way that you would think. Now, due to the development team failing to introduce squirrels in the Mirage set, they felt that they needed to introduce a squirrel in the Weatherlight set. Now, originally, a card by the name of Squirrely Guy was designed. It was going to cost 2 and 2 green, summon Guy, and it was a 3/3 creature, where if Squirrely Guy would be put into a graveyard from play, each player can pay any amount of mana to put an equal amount of squirrel tokens into play under his or her control. They would treat these tokens as 1/1 green creatures. Eventually this card would be tweaked and renamed as Liege of the Hollows, a spirit that does the same thing. But this made the official debut of squirrels into Magic the Gathering. 2 years after that, in 1999, in the Urza's Legacy set, the squirrel theme gained momentum with Deranged Hermit, a 5 CMC elf. When it entered the battlefield, they put 4 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens onto the battlefield and acted as an anthem for squirrels, giving them all +1/+1. But squirrels were still just a token in Magic the Gathering. And now we get to the Odyssey set in 2001. And while cards such as Squirrel Nest were printed in the Odyssey set, where you can enchant your land, tap it, and create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, we finally got an actual creature that was a squirrel. 2 of them actually. One of them was a card that we all know today, Squirrel Mob, where Squirrel Mob gets +1/+1 for each other squirrel that's on the battlefield. And the other squirrel card, not really resembling your typical squirrel, but we had Frozen Beast, a squirrel beast with Threshold, where a player would have Threshold if they have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, and Frozen Beast would get +7/+7. Talk about a pretty decent start to introducing squirrels in Magic the Gathering. Seeing as this was still the early years in Magic, squirrels weren't really taken as seriously. They were relegated to more supplemental sets, or sets that aren't intended for standard-like formats. But squirrels made a return to the standard legal set at Coria Lair of Behemoths with the card Helica Glider. Surprisingly, the first legendary creature squirrel was Acornelia Fashionable Filcher, printed in one of the unsets, unsanctioned. This 4-mana 3/3 had, whenever you cast a spell with a squirrel in the art, you get an acorn counter. Whenever a squirrel you control enters a battlefield or dies, you also get an acorn counter. This kind of lets you know that they didn't really care too much for squirrels or didn't take them as serious. But it wasn't until Kaldheim in 2021 where Toski Bearer of Secrets was printed. I guess technically the first legal legendary squirrel in Magic, where it can't be countered, it's indestructible, attacks each combat if able, and whenever a creature you control dealt combat damage to a player, you got to draw a card. And now we get into Modern Horizons 2. This set sort of revitalized the Squirrel tribe and introduced a bunch of new cards that delighted fans and enhanced gameplay. You had Chitter Spitter, an artifact for 3 mana, where at the beginning of your upkeep you could sack a token, and if you do, put an acorn counter on Chitter Spitter. And squirrels you control get +1/+1 for each acorn counter on it. You can also create squirrel tokens as well. Another good card was Squirrel Sanctuary, a 1-mana enchantment. When it entered the battlefield, you can create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and whenever a non-token creature you control died, you can pay 1 and return Squirrel Sanctuary to its owner's hand. A nice little way of cheating creatures out onto the board. The sorcery Chatterstorm allowed you to create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. Doesn't sound too crazy, right? But it also had Storm, so anytime you cast the spell, you copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. This card works great in Pauper. And of course, how could we forget Chatterfang Squirrel General? The Squirrel tribe's first mythic rare, and just an overall awesome card. It has Forest Walk. Anytime you create a token, you make that many tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens as well. And it has a nice form of removal built into the card. At the time, Modern Horizons 2 was a strong squirrel theme, and it had the largest number of cards, which was 13, that created squirrels, or that were squirrels. But along came Bloomburrow, which would eventually usurp Modern Horizons 2, and had 21 cards that were squirrels or that created squirrels along with his commander decks. We had cards such as Camellia the Seedmiser, giving our squirrels menace and creating squirrel tokens as well. The face commander of the Squirrel Away precon for Bloomburrow, Hazel of the Root Bloom, helping us with our mana and creating copies of tokens we control. The odd acorn gain as well, having menace, trample, and reach, and squirrels you control get +2/+2 and getting trample as well, each of them. And having an effect similar to Toski, where one or more squirrels you control deal combat damage, you could draw a card. There was also a wide array of squirrels such as Thornvault Forager, Valley Rockcaller, Scurry of the Squirrels had Myriad, and just so much support recently, making squirrels one of the more viable tribes in Magic the Gathering. Now, whether you're a new player or a seasoned veteran, the legacy of squirrels in Magic the Gathering is a testament to the creativity and to the fun that defines the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and also share your favorite squirrel cards in the comments below.